Kia ora. Welcome to the webinar series on cooperative housing hosted by Common Ground and the Women Revolutionizing Housing Network. So we've invited two speakers to join us, LaPalme of Cooperative Housing International and Eugenie Stockmann of Cooperation Housing in Australia. So the reason why Common Ground is hosting it is because we enable connected, affordable, and sustainable housing communities in terms of communities being able to develop the kinds of houses they want in collaboration and partnership with others. And the Women Revolutionizing Housing Network was started when we had a retreat in June last year, 2021, and that really galvanized a bunch of women coming together to work towards systems change and build our capacity, our inspiration, and our connections in order to be able to do housing better, both in Aotearoa, New Zealand, as well as anywhere else in the world. So we have a webinar series that's running, this is our first one on the 17th of March, and throughout the year, and if it goes well, we'll carry on. We've got some topics up for consideration. We have a survey at the end of this webinar where you're able to give some feedback on how this was for you today, as well as what you would like, the topics you would like to listen to in the future, and who you might like us to invite if you have anyone in mind. So next month in April, the third Thursday, we're going to have the focus is again on cooperative housing, but specifically on Aotearoa, New Zealand, what we've been able to do so far to advance this type of housing, what are the enablers, and what are the barriers. And we will have some invited guests and again have a discussion time. So thank you all very much for coming to the webinar today. And I look forward to introducing our speakers now and hope you stick around to be able to do the participation side afterward. So I'm just going to read out my introductions of our two speakers. Julie is the Program Director for Cooperative Housing International and has been delivering CHI's work program since 2014. Her previous experience includes 8 years with Canada's Agency for Cooperative Housing as Information Officer and Relationship Manager. Julie has worked in organizational development and property management in housing cooperatives and nonprofits. She does program development and project management also for Cooperative Housing Federation of Canada and the Agency for Cooperative Housing in Ottawa. Eugenie is the CEO of Cooperation Housing in Australia. Her work has a strong focus on community living. She's successfully completed 2 small and now multi-award winning developments in the town of Victoria Park. She worked closely with Cooperation Housing on the new development of housing cooperatives prior to be appointed to the CEO role. So welcome to you both. Thank you all participants for coming. And here we're going to dive into our presentation, which I pressed record on a little bit late, so it just misses the first minute or so. Sorry about that.
Of the international.
Hi, Julie.
We're one of the sectoral organizations of the International Cooperative Alliance, the global apex organization representing all forms of cooperatives. So here in the illustration, you can see I've tried to represent all the different sectors. So we're housing, there's consumer co-ops, there's worker co-ops, retail co-ops, utilities, insurance, health, agricultural, and so on. So we're the organization representing housing. And so there's 3 million co-ops in the world. And yes, there we go, which also represents 1 billion members. So that's more than 12% of humanity that are members of co-ops. So here's a slide on who we are. So we are over 30 members, organizations that are usually national federations or associations that are members of CHI. And and the main motivator for them to be part of the global movement is to be connected to other housing cooperative organizations around the world, to be a more united front and to have a stronger voice. And here in the photo is a clip or a series of clips of a member forum that we had last year. And so we hold member forums a few times a year, and then we also have a board of directors that also meet twice a year. and various committees. So through all of these different forums, we have a work program to help highlight the benefits of housing cooperatives, and we try to create opportunities, networking opportunities for people to remain connected. So here's an example of our members. So all of their logos are on here. So there's over 30 members, and the movement is growing every year. So our mission is to unite, represent, and lead the international movement for cooperative housing and mutual self-help housing. And here are a few different statistics on the growing movement, and showing the strength of the cooperative housing movement in different cities in the world. So what we do is as mentioned, we unite cooperative housing worldwide. We promote the cooperative housing model as a viable housing solution. We facilitate peer-to-peer exchanges to share good practices, innovations, successes, studies, data, and these peer-to-peer exchanges are great opportunities to create networking opportunities, and that often lead to meaningful partnerships and collaborations. We have a communications program where we share housing news and successes and good practices. And for example, last year we launched a podcast called Co-op Conversations, where we talk to people who live in housing cooperatives to highlight the benefits of cooperative housing. And we also talk to experts from around the world. And then we also do advocacy work and education and training. And here's an example of where cooperative housing is located. So pretty much all over the world, and again, always growing. So we have all the continents that are covered, and more and more people are seeing cooperative housing as a means of solving the housing crises, the housing emergencies, the lack of affordability, the lack of community that are found in other forms of housing. So this is these are all reasons that we are seeing that the movement is growing. And it's also a very flexible model that can be easily adaptable to local and regional situations. So here's just an example of the different topics that we talk about when we're doing knowledge exchanges, whether it's through a webinar or a symposium, or at conferences. So we highlight the different co-op housing models. There's about 6 different kinds of models. So we go through and explain all the different ones and where they're located, and I'm going to talk a bit about that in a few minutes. We also talk a lot about the different the financing tools and mechanisms that are used in developing housing co-ops, and as well as land acquisitions and the different policies that are used to develop housing co-ops, and the different policies and programs. And also, we often will have information on the different sustainability initiatives that housing co-ops are putting forward, and then also all the different tools and resources that not only our members are developing, but that other groups and also other forms of community-led housing, because we can we're very similar, and we can all learn from one another. So I'm just going to go through a few best examples from around the world, and I'm just going to start with these 2 photos. So you can see on the left the pink building there. So that's one of the oldest housing co-ops in Zurich in Switzerland, and so here it's we have an example of how they use income generation in their housing co-op. So here we have a cafe that is at the front, and so that is a social enterprise that they rent out the space to a social enterprise, and so it's revenue generating, and it's also a good community building initiative because the members can go have a coffee and and run into other members. And in this co-op, they also have a courtyard, a central courtyard with some structures for the children and some tables for members to eat outside in the summertime. So the design of it is very conducive to building community. And the photo on the right is a newer co-op in Geneva. And so this photo is taken on the rooftop, and they have a rooftop garden, and then they also have a greenhouse, and then it's kind of like a multi-tiered building, and on another rooftop they have some solar panels so that they're generating their own power. That they also sell the excess to the grid, which is also another form of income generation. So very multifaceted, and with diverse initiatives that help to generate income and to build community. And so here, I'm going to talk a little bit about the design of some of these co-ops. So again, I'm afraid I'm going to be using some co-ops in Switzerland as examples, because they use a lot of innovative design, and they really do have some of the best housing co-ops in the world. So it's very easy to pick them as good examples. So on the left, this is a room for youth that they can come after school and just hang out and play the piano, read some books. So this was something that the members, when they were involved in the design of the co-op, because this is a newer co-op, this was a space that that even like the youth were had a voice in what they wanted in their co-op, and they said they wanted a space where they could hang out without any adults around. So they created this space for them, and they just filled it up with used furniture, and the kids use this room all the time. And on the right, this is the co-op that has the solar panels and the rooftop garden. And so they wanted a slide that they could go from one level down to the courtyard, which is quite a interesting design. And then and the courtyard is a central courtyard, and again this is a place where community or the co-op members can gather and meet and can also hold events. And there's also they also rent out space to commercial tenants, and they also have a restaurant. So all in all, just creating a really nice community. And so here again, this is the same co-op with the slide and the rooftop gardens. You see that this is just one long balcony. And this is how they get into their apartment. So you get off the elevator and you go straight away outside on the balcony. And if in order to go and enter your apartment, you have to walk by all your neighbors. So through this design, it's conducive to members talking to one another and bumping into one another, which is a great way of forming bonds within the community. And then the solar panels on the right, as I mentioned earlier, so they generate they generate some power through their solar panels, and they sell the excess to the grid. And then you'll notice that there's like some flowers that are popping up on either side of the panels. So they planted a meadow so that would absorb the heat from the sun, so that it wouldn't just be like solar panels on concrete. And this way it reduces the heat island effect. And now moving to Germany. So this is a historic neighborhood that was built in the early 1900s, and this is in Halle in Germany, which is about an hour outside of Berlin. And so they had old central gas heating systems that they removed. So they had 14 gas heating systems that were removed and were replaced with a central gas, electric and thermal power heated mechanism here, and so that way they're basically providing heat and hot water to over 2,500 people using a lot less energy. So it's win-win. The members are paying less in their energy bills, and they're also producing less CO2 emissions, which is good for the environment. And in this neighborhood, they also, because they had a series of meetings with the members to explain what was happening, and then it was also an opportunity for members to implement other initiatives. Since they were already meeting to get some information on this big project, and they decided that they wanted to do more, and they started a car sharing. Or they did a partnership with a car sharing co-op or an organization, and they also implemented a bike sharing project, and they also planted a meadow, a flower meadow in one of their courtyards, and that was also to lessen the impact of heat islands. That because it gets like you can see all the concrete here, it gets quite hot in the summertime. It gets very like they reach temperatures of 30 Celsius in the summertime. So they were trying to find ways that they can reduce the heat island effects, and so by planting this meadow, they were able to achieve that. Here on the left is, this is a bit of a strange setup. So this is a human waste system. So all of the human waste from the toilets of the buildings, amasses here, and they add straw to absorb the moisture and the smells, and then this is, so it's kind of basically a compostable waste system. And they have a committee of members that that rotate to take care of adding the straw and whatever they have to do. So they take sustainability quite seriously. And on the right, this is in Zurich, and they have solar panels on the building, and then they also have a partnership with the city of Zurich, where they recover the heat from one of the buildings. So you see the building with the zigzags. So that's it's a municipal city, or a city building that houses the computer servers for the municipality. So the co-op is recovering the heat that is generated by those servers, and that's what they're using to heat their co-op. So it's just a nice win-win, because it was just right next door, so it just seemed like a logical thing to do. So moving on to the different co-op models, I'll try and go through this as quickly as possible. So there are 6 models. I mean, there's probably more, but these are the 6 main ones that are most commonly used. So there's rental, the ownership model, limited equity, mutual self-help, grant of use model, which is pretty similar to the mutual self-help, and then the mutual home ownership. So the rental model, which is quite common here in Canada and also in Germany and in Switzerland, is depending on the country. Here in Canada, it's used as there's partnerships with the government to ensure that the housing is affordable, and there's government programs to subsidize the members. So for the most part, members pay 30 to 35% of their income, and then the rest would be subsidized by the government. And a portion of the co-op units would be allocated to these subsidies, and then another portion people would just be paying the normal rates, and that way you're ensuring that you have a mixed income community. And as long as members are following the rules, they have security of tenure, so they can live there for as long as they want. There's no fear of being asked to move, or for whatever reason, if they're following the rules, then that won't happen. And and members actively participate at the board level, at the committee level, and at the general governance of the co-op, and members meetings, and the annual general meeting, and just by the nature of having a democratically run type of housing, it's conducive to, again, creating community, because your members are meeting, they're meeting one another at committee meetings, at board meetings, at general meetings. So it's only natural that people would form bonds and a community. The ownership model or equity model, this is something that is quite common in Norway and Sweden, and in parts of the USA, like in New York, for example. So this is a way for people to access equity, and they can also benefit from the increase in share value. Usually, like in Sweden, the member would buy their shares would be enough to cover the 85% of the development of the co-op, and then the co-op holds the other 15% back. And then the member, when they need to move, they can sell their shares back at market value. So that way they profit from their shares. So basically, when you become a shareholder, you are entitled to the exclusive use of a housing unit. So you don't outrightly own your unit. You own the shares that allow you to occupy that unit. And then the value of your shares are determined by the size of your home and of the market value. And then you also contribute towards the maintenance costs, and then, as like in all the other models, members are involved in the democratic process of operating the co-op. So in this model, the long-term affordability is not guaranteed, because your shares are tied to the market value. So it's kind of like here in Canada, we have the cooperative model, and then we have the condominium model. So this is closer to the condominium model, except that they operate using the cooperative values and principles. But it's not an affordable model by any means. So here we have a little bit of a mixture of both. So this is the model in the USA called limited equity. So you buy shares within the co-op, but when you sell them, there are limitations to the amount that you will gain from selling your shares. So in this way, it ensures the long-term affordability for the next for the following generations. So this is the most common model throughout the USA, and it ensures active participation, and it is allowing for people to gain a bit of equity, but not a whole lot. It's limited and restricted. The mutual aid and self-help model is a model that was developed in Uruguay. There's a federation there called FUCVAM that developed this model, and they've spread this model throughout Latin America, and have also inspired groups in Spain to also use this model. So basically, this is a much more participatory led model, where the members are actively involved in the construction and the administration during the construction phase of the co-op. And so this ensures that the costs are much lower, and so it's self-managed, and and then there it's really led by the belief that housing is a human right, and it's so that it's based on the principle of housing being a human right. So the homes are owned by the cooperative, and not by the individuals or the families, but each family has the legal right to use the home, and they can pass it on to to their children, to the next generation. And should they leave, they would get whatever they put in at the outset, they would get I guess a representative portion of that in return. And then as all the other co-ops, the decisions are made democratically at meetings, both during the construction phase and after. So in this photo here, so this was taken in Montevideo, the capital of Uruguay, and all the people here were involved in the construction. Like they don't do all of the construction, but it's kind of a training program that introduces people to certain trades. And afterwards, they've learned a new trade, and they're able to find some jobs in the construction field. And then kind of stereotypically, the women were involved in the administration during the construction phase, and then they've learned some new skills as well that are applicable once their construction is finished and they've moved into their home. Now they're able to generate some income through these new skills. So the grant of use model is a model that's being used in Spain. It's also common in Denmark, and it's kind of so this is a co-op in Spain, in Barcelona, and so they were inspired by the model in Denmark and in Uruguay. So again, the property is collectively owned, and the members can live there for life. All the major decisions are made at a general assembly. So that this model eliminates the speculation of property and of profiteering, and it is really anchored in the fact that housing is a fundamental right. And so the members are not they don't rent or they don't own their homes. They have the right of use to a particular unit. So each household pays a contribution of around 18,000 euro towards the cooperative's capital, which corresponds to about 20% of the total cost of the project. And then so once the person or the member moves, they would get that back, and then the next person coming in would pay that amount as well. So it's a bit of a hefty amount. So it would mean that they would have to save up in order to move into a co-op, or maybe get a loan, or they basically have to find a way to amass that amount of money. But once they paid that in, then they're good to go. And I'll talk a little bit more about the financial model of this in a little bit. And so the last model is the mutual home ownership. So in this one, the residents own shares it's a mutually owned property trust. And the members contribute to the repayment on the collective mortgage, and the way it's the shares are calculated based on the members' income, and I'll in the next slide I'll talk a little bit more about how there's a whole bunch of calculations, which is a little bit complex. But if it's a model that is of interest, they do have a website, and they have lots of information on what the formula is. So the number of shares that the members own and the payments that they make is based on their income. So this is a way of ensuring that that the amount that people are paying is proportionate to their income. So and then the magic figure, like here in Canada, we use like 30 to 35%. I'm not sure what they use here. The co-op is called Lilac, and it's in Leeds in the UK. So then when they leave, they get a portion of they get their money back minus some deductions, and so they've gained some equity when they go. So this is, a kind of a complex diagram showing how the various figures are calculated. So they use the 35% of their income here to calculate the value of their shares. And they also have a safety net that's built in. So in case someone loses their job, they kind of have they put money aside, in a solidarity fund to protect members in case they lose their job, or they become sick or become injured. Then they have this pool of money that they can draw on, and and then that's creating a safety net. And this is something that we found in co-ops throughout the world. There was a study done on the resiliency of housing co-ops during COVID. And because of these types of schemes of solidarity funds, there were no evictions in any housing co-ops due to furloughs or people losing their jobs during COVID. And then they also, they have a calculation on like if you leave before in less than 3 years, then they'll have a certain amount of money paid back. If they stay longer, then it's actually beneficial for people to stay longer. I can provide a copy of this presentation to Zola, and if you want to share it with folks, you'll be able to look at this a little bit more closely. So just going to talk quickly about some different financing options. This can be like a whole workshop on its own. So there's a variety of different instruments and tools to finance the development of housing co-ops. So there's social impact and ethical funds. There's utility company short-term loans. This is something that they've done in Switzerland. Some revolving and solidarity funds, as I mentioned. State guarantee for pooled debts. This is usually where co-op housing is more developed and has a reputation of being a safe investment. And then social and sustainability impact bonds. This is an example of a community share offer that was done by a student housing co-op Student Housing Co-op Federation in the UK. So they were able to raise over £300,000 in 5 months through a community share issue. So they had 166 investors who bought shares, and they're guaranteed up to a 4% return on their investment. So this, they raised a lot more than they had anticipated. And then they also, they documented their whole process, and on their website, they actually have a guide to doing community share offers. And then this is a tool that's being used quite a bit in co-ops around the world. So this is just their community share offer document. And so this is again showing the co-op in Spain. It's called La Borda, and it's a very multi-pronged way of financing. So they had some ethical banks that provided loans. There's the 18,000 euro that each member deposits. They have a land lease with the city, a 75-year lease, and they have like different civil society organizations that were really interested in seeing this model thrive and succeed. So they had all kinds of different organizations and ethical funds that helped to finance the project. And these are a couple of resources that are really quite useful in helping to guide groups through the development phase of housing co-ops. So the first one is, they're both in the UK. So the community-led homes, they have a great website. I recommend this website all the time, and they have all the different phases that a housing co-op or that a group that wants to develop a housing co-op has to go through. So they list out all the different phases and sort of like what to expect. And the Wayshaper program was kind of born out of that. And that's a program that was developed by the Confederation of Cooperative Housing in the UK. And it's both a sort of like a training program to help guide groups through all of the different decision making and all of the different questions that groups have to ask themselves in order to proceed and progress along the development side of housing cooperatives. And so it's a training program that trains trainers to guide groups through the process. And it also has a series of cards that has, like all the different questions that, that a group has to ask themselves, such as like, what kind of housing co-op do we want? What kind of, what kind of energy use, what kind, where, do we want apartments, houses, just like all, like the slew of questions, like there's hundreds of questions that a group has to go through. So this is like a systematic way of going through that whole process. And it's also it's a licensed program. So if other countries are interested in using this program, you'd be able to buy buy a license to using this whole system. So this is available. You can check out their website if you want to find out some more information. And just to let you know about an event that we're involved in with one of our members in Zurich in Switzerland. So this is going to be a hybrid event, and it's called Growing the Movement. So it's a symposium for housing practitioners and policymakers and researchers to network and to have conversations about some evolving issues and common common items that we're all working on and exploring new tools. For example, the Wayshaper program is going to be one of the resources that will be presented, and also how we can partner with established organizations to help some smaller organizations in development and in growing the movement. So these are some of the topics that we're going to be covering. So how housing cooperatives are an engine for making our cities more environmentally sustainable, equitable, and democratic, and in cooperative housing for a better and just recovery, and more affordable and community-led housing. And because more and more people are looking at cooperative housing as a solution to rising and land and house prices and gentrification and scarcity of housing, it'll be an opportunity to explore the tools and programs that facilitate cooperative housing development at local, national, and international levels. And we'll also look at the role of government and technical advisors and civil society in facilitating access to all these tools. There's a website. I don't know, do I have it on here? Yeah. So you can sign up for updates at housingsymposium.coop, and because it's going to be a hybrid event, you'll be able to participate from the comfort of your home, or if you fancy a trip to Zurich, even better in person. So in conclusion, cooperative housing model, the cooperative housing model is it's a good non-market alternative. And there's, like we all know, that there's an enormous gap between the need for decent, affordable housing and its availability. The price of housing, is determined by, by the one factor, production, whose supply is fixed, and that's land, and where the land is located. We've seen direct state intervention through the delivery of public housing and how it's mostly failed. And it's failed to create communities, to house people safely. It's failed physically and ethically, and we can see that through a lot of public housing that has been demolished or is in a state of disrepair and disarray. So cooperative housing is a win-win solution. It is a viable model to house people, and it's not purely a price-based solution. It's also a values-based solution, which is something that a lot of people are yearning for. So in this way, co-op housing has a large-scale role to play in solving the housing crises that we're seeing in most areas around the world. And we have seen this. We've seen the model being successfully implemented and thriving for like over a century in countries like Germany and Switzerland and Uruguay, Austria, Denmark, the USA, here in Canada, so we're hoping that cooperative housing sees a resurgent in New Zealand. In our podcast, we interviewed Rosie Moore, who lives in Peterborough Housing Co-op in Christchurch, and so they have a lovely housing co-op there called Pocket Neighborhood, where the housing is built around a central courtyard, and again, very conducive for community building. And but it's a shame that it's that there aren't more. So we're by spreading the success stories and talking to people like yourselves and people who are policymakers. This is only helping to emphasize the benefits of cooperative housing, and we'd love to see it grow in countries where it's it has a very small foothold at the moment. So we share all these success stories and tools and great things that people around the world are doing on our social media channels. And then on our Co-op Conversations podcast, and if you go to our website, you can find more resources and more great stories. And then you can also sign up for our e-bulletin on our website, and get more information there as well. So there. That's co-op housing in a nutshell at the international level.
Thank you, Julie. I think we're gonna hold questions until the end, because I would like. So the way we'll progress is that Eugenie will share her presentation. We'll open it up to the whole group to ask either one of you any questions, but really, answering those could go into another hour if there's much detail. So I'm going to limit the amount of questions, but make your presentations available, and which includes the links that you have given in your presentation for people to discover further, and reminding people that next month we're going to be talking about cooperative housing specifically for Aotearoa. So let me, and then please stick around, because we want to have a group discussion in terms of who's here. I would like to know who's here, and I'll be just asking a few questions to the group for everyone to participate. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Eugenie.
Thank you, Zola. I'll put this on. What? How much time do you want to give me?
We would like, I think you had maybe 15 or maybe 20 minutes.
All right, okay. I'll keep it short, because I always like, as a participant too, just the ability to ask questions and have some discussion. So I'll give you a very kind of brief overview of me, the organisation I work for, and what we're up to here in the western part of Australia. So obviously, housing cooperatives. My name is Ozini. I'm the CEO of Corporation Housing, and I'm Dutch originally. And when I went back quite a few years ago now, one of the projects I visited was the largest straw bale building project in the Netherlands, and I was absolutely taken aback when I found out that that was a social housing project. made possible through subsidies from local government, state government, the European Union, you name it, but it was absolutely amazing. And it really started me on this journey to go, well, if we do development, then, how can we really, engage future residents in the process, and also, really look at the affordability piece. The reason I was interested in that is, together with my husband and another couple, we built a very small project close to the Perth CBD. 2 townhouses, 2 apartments. I still live in, obviously, the Strawbell home. That's part of that project. But obviously, part of that journey, I'm very, very aware of, all the challenges that you face, but also the financial part of the equation. We sold our house to make it possible, and lived for up to 3 years into what was absolutely a really, really shitty rental. For example, had waterfall on the inside of the window when it bucketed down with rain. So it's the things you've got to do to make your dreams a reality, and I don't regret it, a single day. But it means I've got a very much lived experience of what it takes to get, community-led housing projects and housing cooperatives off the ground. More recently, I did a program facilitated by Katie McKemmett. She's often referred to as the mother of co-housing in the United States, and has played an instrumental role in getting many of these communities off the ground in the US, and, also supports people like me, if you look at the international perspective. And through the program, she's really sharing 30 plus years of, wisdom, experience. There's probably nothing that, she hasn't encountered before. So how I came to be the CEO of Cooperation Housing is obviously, through that all accumulated experience, and, really bringing together that, community living with, some development expertise. I've now been in that role for probably about 4.5 years. So why housing co-ops? Why do I think they make such a difference? Well, first of all, and I think, Julie's presentation, says it all too. They really, I think, strive for, if you think about sustainability and the environmental aspects, they really show leadership in this space. If you start looking at some of the research, then what is becoming increasingly apparent is that I can live in a net zero or negative, carbon, footprint home. But if it's a single residential home, then if we focus on community, that community, particularly if it's using co-housing and sharing resources and stuff like that, will actually outperform the net zero building any day. So it's that community aspect of what I think our sector is trying to do really is the secret sauce in achieving those environmental outcomes. Secondly, and again, there's a whole lot of research that also shows that, socially and economically, that we really, as a sector, produce a whole range of benefits to the sector. Interestingly, in Australia, we are just in the process, we achieved significant funding a little while ago to undertake research for the Australian housing cooperative sector specifically, to really understand what the values and benefits are. So that's a project I think we're about to launch into the data collection phase. So probably watch this space in about 1 year, 2 years' time, when we start to see what's coming out of that. And then, considering my passion for community-led housing, I think if I look at the Australian context, that the cooperative legal structure is just so well placed to deliver those kind of projects. Community-led and affordable, they can just do it all. I've seen, a whole lot of other examples, people using, unit trusts and companies and stuff like that. But I think the cooperative legal structure brings something that is so unique. And for me, first and foremost, it's got the ability to really, have concern for community bedded into its core. Whereas if you look at any other structure, it is, and by law should be about making money. So it really is something that sets cooperatives aside, and that whole international perspective with values, principles that we've agreed on internationally, I think is makes it just so incredible to work in this space. So what is Cooperation Housing, the organisation that I work for? We're the umbrella organisation for housing cooperatives in Western Australia. We've got a small team over here. The sector is quite small on this part of the country. But if I look at my counterparts in other states like Victoria and New South Wales, they are significantly larger. And for example, in Victoria, I think we've got about 2,500-3,000 homes in the cooperative sector alone. And all these homes are providing social and affordable housing, to the members of these cooperatives. New South Wales, I think similarly, have got about 500 homes. I've got another, counterpart in South Australia. So we pretty much, cover most of Australia if you think about the cooperative housing sector. And we formed an alliance, so we meet fairly regularly, the Australian Cooperative Housing Alliance. So that's where we freely share, knowledge and expertise. So they learn from what we're working on, and vice versa. I can pick up the phone, I can send an email, and we just help each other out. And I think that really is a display of those cooperative principles in action. I've got a little video. I'll see how it works about cooperation housing. It's just a couple of minutes.
I don't even know what a co-op is. What?
I think you have to turn on your volume, Eugenie.
Sorry, you've muted yourself, Ozini. You've muted yourself.
It's very much an autonomous, self-managed group of people.
It's not intrusive, yet people are looking out for you and showing kindness.
Members of housing co-ops are more than just tenants.
We work on a consensus basis of decision making, which means that everybody has to have ownership over decisions that are made.
I get to choose the colours that the walls get painted. I don't have to ask permission if I want to hang a picture on the wall.
We collect our own rent and we do our own maintenance on our grounds and our houses.
We have chair, treasurer, so on.
They build skills and connect to their neighbours and the wider community.
I'm learning those skills, office work, filing, all those computer skills that I didn't think I would ever have the brain for.
Research from around the world demonstrates the value of housing cooperatives. Co-ops build relationships between neighbours.
We had a little party the other night, didn't we?
Yeah, between ourselves.
Three of us, we had a couple of bottles of red or something. It was lovely, wasn't it? Mm.
Provide stability through security of tenure.
This is ours until we want to move somewhere else, which I don't see me doing.
Have a positive impact on health and well-being.
No, you ain't moving.
No, okay. I've been told.
And offer opportunities to acquire skills while reducing the cost of living.
There's many areas where you wouldn't normally push yourself out of your comfort zone.
In Australia, most housing co-ops are a member of an umbrella organisation. This organisation provides support to existing housing cooperatives in areas such as governance, financial management, asset management and property maintenance. They may also assist with the growth and development of new housing and cooperatives.
Mutual investment in the community is the heart of living in a cooperative.
All co-ops are bound by internationally agreed values and principles. All members have an equal say. They build sustainable and inclusive homes and communities.
It feels much more like my home.
Love it. We've been here for 9 years and really pleased. It's the best move we've ever made.
Cooperative living is the future of housing.
So if you look at Australia, we have a number of housing cooperatives that we support and just help with whatever is needed. If you go to our YouTube channel, then you can watch videos about some of those individual co-ops as well. We've got Anana's House, Arch, First Fremantle and Subi Leaderville, and honestly, they're all very, very different. And when you watch the videos, what you'll see is they were completely unscripted. You know, people shared, you know, their experience, their stories when, you know, maybe just, you know, been, but they definitely didn't read out or practice their sentences. So this is, you know, some really frank and honest representation of what it is and who our residents are. So our mission is to build strong communities through cooperative living. And what we want to do is to, I really look after the existing housing cooperatives so that you know, the residents there can thrive. But at the same time, we want to provide more people with the opportunity to live in a housing cooperative. We've been able to secure and it's through an option agreement at the moment, a significant parcel of land that can be developed as a housing cooperative. And that's in the southwest of Western Australia. This particular parcel of land is specifically for people aged 55 and over or a disability. And like I said, we want to develop it under a cooperative model. So the project itself is over 6,000 square metres, and it's very centrally located within Witchcliffe Eco Village. The Eco Village itself is about 300 lots, single residences, commercial facilities, community facilities, and this parcel of land is at the heart of it. The proposal is about 25 dwellings, and obviously we've got to comply with the Eco Village design guidelines, which all focus on really, you know, getting as low a carbon footprint as possible. So this is the master plan for the Eco Village, and I don't know whether you can see my cursor, but that's the particular parcel of land that is going to be the Colouring Housing Cooperative. Where we're at in the development process is it is a community-led project. So we started promoting the opportunity back in March, April last year. We then had a kickoff workshop with future residents in the middle of October, followed by a first design workshop at the end of November. And we've just closed the participatory design process with a weekend workshop in the middle of February. So it's really the plans where they are today have come about with very significant input and participation from people that you know, potentially are the future residents and are going to live there. And I can honestly say, I shouldn't be surprised, but I can honestly say that what's come out of it and what the concept plans look like at the moment is very different from what we started with. When we have the weekend workshops, then what we do is they're a Saturday and a Sunday, and we always have a common meal on the Saturday. And I think that sets the scene for you know, what the community offers as well, because the concept plans include a fairly significant common house. So we very much use that community aspect to the entire project, including the design and the facilities. This project is supported by a team of professionals. So I think some housing cooperatives really get, you know, off from the ground up with, you know, people talking about, you know, the opportunity of, you know, doing something to get up potentially for years and years and years. We are able to help this group hopefully go through that process a little bit quicker. So they are supported by Corporation Housing. Corporation Housing has appointed the architect. We've also appointed a process facilitator to really help with the facilitation of meetings, things like sociocracy, you know, giving people some hands-on training about that. Plus, we can tap into Katie McKemmon's knowledge and expertise if and when needed. How we now onboard new members is through a process like an explorer process. So people pay $150. That then means that they are part of all our communication channels, can attend meetings, can really, I don't know, kind of tire kick the project before they commit to becoming a member of the cooperative. So it goes both ways. It's for the potential new member to really understand, you know, what they're getting into and whether it is for them, but it's also for the group to get to know them, you know, before someone formally applies for membership. I know that was very brief, but I think it gives you a bit of an overview of what we're working on in the West, and I'll just hand back to you, Zola.
Great, thank you, Eugenie. It's so really great to kind of see that you're in the process right now of developing, and it's really lovely, the overlays that I'm seeing. So it looks like it's a cooperative ownership on an eco-village using like co-housing principles. And it's really great to get that insight into the development process as well, like who you're working with, that it's really a collaborative thing. It's not just the community on their own trying to figure it out, but it's that collection of professionals that are helping to really guide that process in the most efficient way. That's really great to drill down into that detail. So I'm excited to see how that looks going further. So did you have any questions for Julie or for Eugenie? Oh yeah, Carol?
How do you, when you're starting out, how did you find the new members for, like, where do you choose to advertise and get your members from? And how do you dispel the fears of living in a community? Because so many people are so like, oh, but I need my space. So that's an obstacle that we're looking to try and overcome as we're forming, trying to form a cooperative in Whangarei in New Zealand.
Do I have a go at answering that, Zola?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So for the project, we prepared a marketing plan, which we review on a regular basis. We generally, because our focus on affordability, it's not a project that comes with a big dollar marketing budget. So we're very creative in how we spend it. And same as the approach for the whole development process, we do count on a bottom-up approach, you know, word of mouth. But we've got the cooperation housing database. So that's, you know, really the core of, you know, the first instance, what we tap into. We use Facebook, we use LinkedIn, we have had some advertisements in the local paper, we've produced postcards, we've got a sign on the block. So that's just some examples of, you know, what we're using. We've also got a project website. So that's where people can find, you know, more information. So yeah, that gives just some insight in, you know, the collateral. And this is where I think it is really, you know, important to highlight that, you know, an organisation like Cooperation Housing is currently, you know, funding that. Whereas if you don't have, you know, that kind of backing, and that's why I really look with quite some jealousy at countries like the UK, where there is, you know, significant support, including financial, for groups to get off the ground and get some of that seed capital, you know, in the very important, you know, initial phases. I'm very, very jealous of that.
Yeah, that's pretty significant.
Yeah. Your second question
Awesome.
was around, you know, the fear of, you know, community. That's why I do think that the way that we're designing the process is people can really get, you know, familiar with, you know, what that is. So for example, our weekend workshops that we've got a common dinner, I think is really important. I think it's really important that you invest in the process facilitation to really educate and train people on how to make decisions together well is absolutely critically important. For me, that was a real light bulb moment working with Katie McKemmont. She's got a line item in her budget, which is the process facilitation. If it doesn't get used, it comes back to Cooperation Housing, not the group. It's not a saving that you'll be able to make. And when I heard that, I went, of course, because people tend to go, oh, well, let's not, you know, hire a process facilitator because, you know, then, you know, we can, you know, go a bit cheaper. It's so important that we invest in the people that are going to make this community. So, and I really think that, you know, takes some of the fear away of, you know, what living in community is like. At the same time, let's face it, it's not for everyone. And that's why too, I think, you know, we shouldn't be afraid of, if we really think as a group that, you know, someone's just not suited, you should be able to refuse membership. And, you know, let's face it, within a co-op, you can do that.
Fantastic. Thank you. That was great answers.
Okay, who would like to ask a question next? Oh, Robin, go ahead.
Hi there. Thanks to you both for that. That was really fantastic. And it's really inspiring, or what I learned from each of you really is that there is already quite a well-developed kind of ecosystem, if you like, to support new cooperative housing groups. And like you said, in Australia, you have really good cooperative legislation. I don't think we have that in New Zealand. And I guess my question to each of you is, how do we get started? You know, it's like we need those supportive organisations to help the groups come into being, but we also need, I guess, the groups to be doing it to inform, you know, the legislation to get it changed. So any advice for New Zealand, where we really almost have no housing co-ops at all? Yes.
Yeah, either one.
I'll just quickly jump in. One piece of advice is to look at the legislation that exists in other countries, and it would make sense to look at Australia being your neighbor, and also to start building a relationship with your lawmakers, with your representatives, and to meet with them as a group and to explain, like what cooperative housing is, and that this is a model that is quite common in other countries, and just to start like plugging that idea, and we're also knowing that this is a common hurdle in countries where the laws don't already exist. We're working on compiling some of the key components of different legal frameworks around the world to sort of aggregate them, and then this will be a resource that groups like yourselves can use to spearhead legislation. Yeah. And sometimes it's an advantage, to start from scratch. You can, really look at what other countries are doing and take the best parts of each one and piece that together.
But to add to that, Robin, is if I look back at the history of the co-op housing sector here in Western Australia, then interestingly, the majority of our existing housing cooperatives aren't incorporated under the Co-ops Act. So they fall under what we have got as the Associations Inc. Act. Corporation housing in itself is not incorporated under the Co-ops Act. We're a company limited by guarantee, but we're still a co-op because we've got the co-op values and principles as part of our constitution. So, it's the reason that happened is that at the time, I think the legislation here in Australia was just not up to the point that was, consideration. I think we're in a different landscape now. So just don't despair. There's other ways and means on how you can do it. But I think ultimately it's, co-ops deliver something to the community and to their members. And I still see, when I work with bodies like, we've got Cooperatives WA, we've got the Business Council of Co-ops and Mutuals. I still see examples of people that set up cooperative type businesses, but using different legislation. So it's just such a, complex system that we're a part of. And I don't think the legislation is the be all and end all.
I've just put into the chat for those who are in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we actually have a Society for Cooperative Housing that has been meeting with our officials, and we've tried to put together a pilot project. Unfortunately, we don't have any funding, so it's just a Facebook page, so hopefully you can still access it if you haven't banned Facebook from your life. But I've also put the membership page, so just in case, you can go directly to their membership page, also in the chat. And then there's a newsletter you can sign up for from there. So you can bypass the Facebook thing. And hopefully, yeah, we'll be able to get some funding to have a proper website. And that's the beginning. What I think is how we can start to mobilize for cooperative housing in this country. And I believe that they're actually having an AGM in April. So if you sign up now, you can attend the AGM, hear what's been going on for the last year, what's planned going forward. If you want to sit on the committee to move things forward, then that would be an opportunity. I sat on the committee for, I think it was almost 2 years. So we'll take maybe one more question if there's a burning question. Otherwise, we're going to move into the group being able to share with each other. I'm quite keen to hear, yeah, what's brought everybody here today? We did want to do that in small groups just so everybody could get a chance to connect, but I am not seeing a way that I can do that. So we'll just ask everyone to share briefly. I guess it would be, we can see your name on the screen, where you're located, and what brought you here today. Why did you want to attend today? We'll start with that, sort of your why. And we'll just go around. The first person to go then nominates the next person to go. And if you can please keep your answer to maybe 30 seconds, that would be great, just because, yeah, there's a few more questions I wanted to put out for us to discuss. So who would like to go first? Yeah, Carol, yep.
Why not? All right, so my name's Carol. I'm living in Whangarei currently in a flat, and while we're trying to prepare ourselves to live in a housing co-op. We've got our sites on a piece of land with a old abandoned hotel that needs doing up. So we're working out how to make it all work, and so we've been doing a lot of research, and so that's why I'm here today looking at all this cooperative housing information. We've really been trying to find as much as we could from here and overseas. It doesn't look like it's actually been done in New Zealand, so we're working through the documents we need. We've borrowed a lot from Earth Song because one of our members is from there originally. Yeah, that's why I'm here, to gather information, inspiration, and resources.
Want to put into the chat your project? I believe you have a link to the project.
Yeah, I can chuck a link into the chat.
Yeah, so if people are interested to see your model, which is an interesting way of doing it, where it's having a co-living, I believe, approach, and maybe look at a renovation project rather than a build anew.
Yeah, that's it.
You've got some interesting dynamics to your project that I think would be great for people to see. So
yeah, I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay, pass the baton to someone. Oh, you're muted.
Karen.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So I'm currently living in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, New Zealand, and on the North Shore, which is lovely. And well, I mean, I've lived in a cooperative situation many years ago, which had its successes and its failures, shall we say. And for the last decades or more, maybe two decades or more, I've been a member of a spiritual community. And I guess recently I've become interested in cooperative housing again because, well, as I'm sure you all know, affordable housing is a huge issue in Auckland, and I myself do not have that. I mean, I have an affordable situation at the moment because I'm living with a family member, but in terms of being able to, you know, build equity or have my own independent situation, I don't have that capacity currently. And so I'm interested both from the point of view of affordability. I'm also very interested from the point of view of sustainability. I'm interested from the point of view of all the social and psychosocial benefits that come through cooperative housing. And I'm also interested in the possibility, and I have no, no real understanding of whether it will happen or not, of it having a spiritual dimension through my spiritual community. So I guess you could say, all of those dimensions are of interest to me. Yeah, that's it.
Or Karen, can you pass the baton?
Oh, sorry. Lani. Sorry, Lani.
Yeah, no. Hello. Thanks, Karen. So I live in Tamahiti and just in a small flat, but I have children who are interested, well, adult children who are interested in community housing. They're it's obviously very clear, as Karen just said, that affordable housing is not really a thing in New Zealand, and they're actually living in Raglan and searching desperately for a place to live and really struggling to find something, anything, as are many people in Raglan. And so, yeah, community housing is definitely of interest. And so I'm just here curious. This is the first time I've attended. It's very informative. And I will be passing on the information to them and get them involved at some level. So thank you. Thank you for providing this. And I will pass it on to Vicky.
Hi there, I'm Vicky. I'm living in Wanaka, which is in the south of the South Island, a beautiful lakeside town. We have an absolute building boom going on here. I am a property developer, but not your typical one. Like I am really trying to incentivize people to build energy efficient homes, and everything I do is around trying to create communities, not just streets, and also minimize our impact on the environment. I came here because I wanted to see if there was anything that you two speakers particularly knew of that was developer led, because it is much easier to get the group of people together and from the ground up come with a collective to make the collective decisions. But from a funding perspective, it's much easier for a developer to get the funding. And I feel like the two stall. The developer finds it hard to get a community together because you don't want to be dictating how things are done. You need the collective together, and you don't want to take responsibility for everybody else's. Anyway, I'm curious if there's top-down driven ways to do it. We also have here in Wanaka, although we have a real affordability issue, that's being addressed in some different ways through a community housing trust and things like that. But I see our biggest issue is the vastly excessive houses and poor town planning, and just the general waste and overconsumption. Like people are having, we have people with no budgets here, literally building mansions, and it's I just want to make them think if they could change the way they build, then they could drive change throughout the whole country very quickly by changing trends and causing market demand for better products for insulation and better joinery and that sort of thing. So that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Vicky. I am quite interested, either Julie or Eugenie, if you could say whether or point us in the direction of more developer-led. I kind of got a little bit of that from yours, Eugenie, as maybe that Kailoring perhaps is a bit developer-led.
I definitely say so, because without our support, our contribution, that project wouldn't be where it is today. I think around the affordability piece, Cooperation Housing also, is working incredibly hard to make a big difference, because we're a registered community housing provider. We're a charity. So when it comes down to, obtaining grants, government funding, we're very well placed to do that on behalf of the sector and to work with these cooperatives to, get that funding in to really address the social and affordable housing piece. And that's where, if you have that's where for this project, we are kind of in the space of the developer. But we're not we're a not-for-profit developer. We're not a, for-profit developer.
There's two of us out there, and so trying to get the average developer who's making a fortune to do a not-for-profit exercise. And I was very curious too, Julie, you said, I can't remember which one it was. I did write it down somewhere, but I can't see it. The grant of use one, you only needed a 20% deposit, but you didn't say where the other 80% of funding comes from. And I was just wondering how you get the funding for some of these cooperatives when the residents are only putting up such a small amount to live there.
Yeah, well, that's where there was the spider's web of financing. So they put down, their 25%, but then the rest is financed by, like the Ethical Bank and, and all these other funders. So by paying a monthly, something I forgot to say was that the members pay a monthly amount, and then, that goes towards paying, the collective mortgage of the building. Yeah. And another thing that I forgot to mention, because I was running overtime, was that they put each member pays €5 a month, and that goes into a future building fund. so that ensures that their children, and their grandchildren will have money to develop the next co-op. So that, they're basically building a fund to keep, to keep developing, and in the hope that, they'll have enough money that they don't need to take out a loan and pay interest, and then that'll be a lot more affordable for the next generation. And just to go back to your question about, the developer dilemma, in places where co-op housing and other forms of nonprofit housing are a lot more established, there are developers that build nonprofit housing. I mean, that's not the only thing that they build, but they, over time they've developed these partnerships, and because they're also tied into government programs, they're ensured that, they're going to get paid their fees. They're not going to be making the huge profit that they do with private housing, but when there's not as much private housing that's being developed, they'll do nonprofit housing. And also the sectors, the co-op housing sectors are a lot stronger, a lot more established. So they actually have developed their own technical resource groups. And so it's like an in-house development team. So you have, like, when I started in co-op housing, it was a combination of a member-based, federation that offered member services, but then we also had an arm that did development. And so that's how I got my start, was doing organizational development and doing information sessions and guiding like these fledgling groups to go through sort of like all of the steps that they had to go through. So that's another model in Europe, that's quite common. And also the housing co-ops there are, like, for example, like in Germany and in Switzerland, they've built up, over years, they've built up enough capital that they just use that to build more housing. So like one housing co-op is actually maybe like 20 different communities, and so they're able to leverage their assets to keep adding on. So that's another way that housing gets developed. But you're not there yet.
Yeah. It's good to know. That financing thing is such a massive piece of the puzzle that we do have missing in this country as well with our banks. So risk averse, but it's good to know that what we could have in the future, it could be that. So I just, unfortunately,
maybe just on that, Zola, I think it is something that I've really learned. If groups get organised to team up with a developer, or potentially, to team up with a not-for-profit organisation and a private developer, can be really, really key to get a project off the ground, and we should not be afraid of doing that. So if you've got sympathetic developers that really want to do something like this, we've got to work together, because ultimately that money part of the puzzle is a really, really critical one. We can dream of the pie in the sky, but until someone's going to pay for it, it ain't going to happen. But what we can do from the ground up is to really showcase what the interest is. That then gives a private developer the comfort around where the market sit, because they're going to do something different. We really got to work together to bring these projects, and deliver them successfully. Because that's what makes a difference. And the way that I've learned that is through actually looking at the US, because the US doesn't have what Europe has, when it comes to government subsidies and support, and local councils actually getting it. And I think Australia is very, very similar. We don't have much support here from local councils, or government probably over the last few decades until a particular federal government stream, So if co-ops are a self-help approach, let's do it and just team up with the right partners. They're there.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's lots of architects as well that are interested in developing something different that's more community oriented, and that's also founded on sustainability principles as well. And there's a lot of architects are working in firms that they're just paying the bills, and it's not really what they want to do. So they're really quite interested in working with groups like yourselves as well.
Yeah.
Very good advice. I think that's definitely what we need. And I think I just will reference, Robin has put in the chat her book, Co-Housing for Life. And very much a community-led approach, but it did take many years. And so there's a bunch of us in this country that would like a more mixed way of doing this community-led development, but as more of a collaboration partnership with those who have the expertise and perhaps more access to capital and clout. So yeah, that's what I would suggest too, going forward. Well, we've run over time, but I did want everybody to have a chance to introduce themselves. So if I could please ask, we'll just go around to introduce ourselves. And then we do have another one next month that's still on the topic of cooperative housing. So if you're loving the topic, then we're going to be doing this again next month. So let's just go around to everybody. I'll pick the next person. Robin, you're unmuted, so I'll go with you.
Okay, thank you.
So why are you here?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm here because I spent many years getting Earthsong Eco Neighbourhood off the ground and built. I now teach co-housing seminars to whoever wants to learn, and I'm also now on the committee of this, the Housing Innovation Society, which is really looking not just at cooperatives, but at co-housing, all forms of community-led housing, really. And so I came along today to upskill myself about the co-op housing piece of that puzzle, really. Just incredibly committed to community-led housing in all its forms. So thank you very much. It's been very helpful. Karen. Oh no, the other Karen. Karen Summerhays.
Yeah, you just about got two there and the one go before. Kia ora everyone, I'm Karen Summerhays. I'm Senior Community Development Advisor at the Whakatane District Council. But I've also been involved in the National Science Challenge on Life When Renting, on the National Reference Group there. Have been involved in a lot of spatial planning and place shaping and lots of different levels of housing. Presently, I'm running a research project on the situation of homelessness in the Whakatane district and doing quite a bit of work in that space, just trying to advocate a lot for changing of council district plans and making sure that housing typology is looked at rather than just how many houses can go on a particular block of land. Have had experience and on running forums for smart growth, which included affordable housing and the property developers forum, which was always very insightful. And so, yes, I've got a bit of an interest in this. And when I'm coming up, I was interested in this particular workshop today because I want to be a bit more informed when I say these words around there are other mechanisms to provide housing. So just trying to keep myself up with the play and see what I can do in my advocacy space. Kia ora, everyone. I choose Lani.
I think I already went. Someone else's turn. How about Julie? Julie with the, yeah.
Yeah, tēnā koutou. Kia ora. Yeah, so I'm just thoroughly interested in the whole, I mean, going from everywhere. My training is architecture, but, you know, sustainable, affordable, cooperative, co-housing. It just seems a sensible way to live together, and particularly in New Zealand with, you know, a lot of people have lived that way for a long time. So to find a way to bring that back, and yeah, just I'm right into it all. So that's why I'm here. Thanks. Yeah, fantastic what you guys are doing. Thank you.
Who would you like to pass to? I think we might only have 3 more people.
Yeah, for Sintry.
I'll ask unmute. Otherwise, maybe Bobby, are you ready to share?
Yes, kia ora. Hi everybody. Can you hear? Yep. So thank you for another awesome webinar, Zola. I'm Bobby, based in Tauranga. I am on the committee for Society for Cooperative Housing. I am the founder of Closer Developments, and we are attempting our second cooperative pilot project in Bay of Plenty, this one in Tauranga, an apartment co-op. We did have high hopes that we could hit the ground running based on everything we'd learned and not quite achieved in our previous pilot, but the walls are going back up. So we've just about accepted that we will have to use a unit title, which is really not what we wanted, but having some kind of cooperative agreement within the titles, or a cooperative company that owns the building overall. So we're just working out that structure with some funding we've been granted by community funder. So again, shifting our expectations, unfortunately, given the time constraints, but really, as you've all mentioned, the finance is probably one of the biggest things. Banks everybody's risk adverse. So I would like to talk more with Vicky and any other potentially sympathetic developers, because we're going to need that layer between the residents' risk to deliver the project. So, while it would be nice to have a Bagrupin kind of residents actually developing for themselves, I don't think anything in the country is ready for that yet. So thank you, and let's all keep working together. Yeah.
Great. I think, Bobby, you're on my list to ask for the next month's webinar, so we can hopefully get more of that if you agree to come on. And I think we've tried, is it Vincent or Vincent? But maybe they're not there. I've asked them to unmute, but I think that might be all that is left. Everyone else had to leave on time. So I'll leave it at this, but I will follow up with a survey for getting your feedback on how did it all go today and what more would you like to see, so we can make the rest of the year, catered to what works and what you're interested in. And just to remind you, there is the Women Revolutionizing Housing, where I also share other information besides about the webinar through that, as well as the Common Ground website as well. So thank you very much to our guests, presenters, Julie and Eugenie, for your time and effort to put your presentations and be present for our questions, and your wealth of experience. It's very reassuring to know that you're working on projects that are actually happening that have happened. So it gives us hope.
Well, thanks very much for inviting me and for the opportunity. And I wanted to ask, is it okay if I take a screenshot and share it on our social media channels? Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So if everyone wants to wave or smile or thumbs up. Great. Thank you. Okay, I'm off to bed now.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks, Zola. Thanks, everyone.
It's past my bedtime.
Thanks, Zola.
Good luck, everyone, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Zola. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Mentors.